Let me sit with you for a moment, the way I would at a kitchen table late in the afternoon. When the light softens and the world becomes honest, I want to speak gently. Because what I am about to tell you has saved more than one person's home, their savings, their peace. If you are over 60, there are certain documents you must never sign in fear or confusion. One signature made in a moment of pressure can shift the ground beneath your feet, and I am here to make sure that never happens to you. Let me start with a story. A quiet man named James, 72 years old, a widower who still kept his wife's plants alive on the windowsill, called me one evening sounding smaller than I had ever heard him. He said, "I think I signed something I shouldn't have." He had been sitting in his living room when a contractor knocked on his door, claiming that roof repairs were urgent. They spoke fast. They slid papers toward him. They used words that sounded important, words that made him feel as if he was already behind. Willem told me I just wanted them to stop talking, so I signed. When he brought me the document, my heart dropped. It wasn't a simple estimate. It was a binding sales agreement, tied to a loan with interest he could never afford. One signature, one moment of pressure, and suddenly his security was at risk. This is how it happens. Not because someone is careless, not because someone is naive. It happens because the world has become too quick, too loud, too full of people who count on seniors feeling overwhelmed. This is where fear meets the law. And this is where I want to protect you before anyone reaches for your peace again. Let me tell you the truth about the first dangerous document, the power of attorney. On the surface, it seems harmless. Someone you trust says they want to help manage your paperwork, pay your bills, handle your affairs. But once you sign a broad power of attorney, that person can access your accounts, move your money, sign documents in your name, and sell your property without you ever raising a pen. I have seen families strengthened by a responsible power of attorney. And I have seen families shattered when the wrong person was given too much power too quickly. One woman named Emma, 68, signed a general power of attorney her nephew pushed under her nose. She loved him. She trusted him. She thought she was being practical. Weeks later, he had emptied nearly 30 years of savings. When she asked how this was possible, I had to tell her the truth. A power of attorney grants the power she had unknowingly placed in his hands. It should have been narrow, specific, and witnessed by someone who understood the limits she needed. She was not wrong. The system failed her by not explaining the weight of that signature. Now let me tell you about a different kind of trap, the confession of debt. This one is dangerous because it plays on worry and on the desire to avoid conflict. Someone hands you a paper and says, "Just sign here to confirm what we discussed." Sometimes it's a family member, sometimes a neighbor, sometimes a collector who has no legal claim at all. A confession of debt is not just a note, it is a binding admission that you owe money, even if the amount is wrong, even if the debt never existed, even if you signed because someone made you feel rushed or guilty. Once your name is on it, the person holding that paper has more legal power than you think. I once spoke with a gentleman named Jake, 71, who signed a confession of debt after his grandson insisted he had borrowed money years before. Jake did not remember the loan, but he feared looking forgetful. He feared upsetting the boy he loved. He signed. When it reached my desk, I looked at him gently and said, "You are allowed to protect yourself. Love and pressure do not belong in the same room." The law was built to shield him, but he had been taught his whole life to avoid making trouble. The truth is simple. Never sign a confession of debt without complete understanding and independent advice. You are allowed to slow everything down. You are allowed to say no. The next kind of document is quieter, almost invisible, because it hides behind medical fear, the medical authorizations. Medical authorizations are often placed in front of seniors during moments of stress. A doctor says they need it to proceed. A caregiver says it is routine. But some forms grant permission to share your entire medical history, to make decisions about your care, or to bill services you did not request. One woman named Marika told me she signed a stack of papers at an appointment because she felt embarrassed asking what each form meant. Buried in the pile was an authority that allowed a private agency to submit ongoing claims to her insurance in her name. Those claims drained her annual benefits long before she ever needed serious treatment. When she learned what happened, she looked at me with wet eyes and whispered, "I thought I was just doing what they asked." You are not wrong for trusting professionals, but you are allowed to ask questions. You are allowed to take forms home. You are allowed to read slowly. No one who cares about your health should ever make you feel rushed. Now let me bring you back to something many people underestimate: sales agreements. These papers often appear during doorstep visits, home repair pitches, window replacement offers, alarm system upgrades, mobility devices, and even so-called prize drawings. They use friendly voices. They say, "This is only an estimate." They place a pen in your hand before you have had a chance to breathe. But the truth is simple. If the paper has your signature and contains terms, the company may treat it as a contract. I remember a couple, Brett and Karen, both over 70, who thought they had signed a request for information about solar panels. What they actually signed was a full purchase commitment. When the bill arrived, their faces fell. They said, "We didn't know we were agreeing to anything." The law provides cancellation periods in many situations, but only if you act quickly. And I want you to know this with absolute clarity. You are allowed to say, "Leave the documents here. I will review them with someone I trust." Anyone who insists on immediate signature is not trying to help you. They are trying to bind you. There is another kind of danger, and it has nothing to do with the document itself. It has to do with the tactic. Rush signatures. I have seen salespeople use storms, roof leaks, imaginary deadlines, fake government programs, and emotional pressure to force a signature. They stand in your doorway. They say the offer expires in an hour. They say your insurance requires immediate paperwork. They act as though you are losing something by thinking carefully. Let me tell you the truth. Urgency is the oldest trick in the book. Every predator uses speed to bypass your judgment. But the law is not built on speed. It is built on consent, real consent, calm, informed, unpressured. You are allowed to slow the room down. You are allowed to take the paper and ask, "Why can this not wait until tomorrow?" Most of the time, they cannot give a real answer. And the moment you ask that question, you reclaim control. Blind signing has consequences far heavier than most people realize. When your signature sits on a document, the law presumes you understood it, even if the print was tiny, even if the person explained it poorly, even if you felt intimidated. That is why predators use your kindness against you. They hope you will sign to avoid conflict. They hope you will trust them because they use polite voices. But hear me, you are not failing when you hesitate. You are protecting your dignity. The law was built to safeguard your intentions, not your fear. And if someone pressures you into signing, the wrongdoing is theirs, not yours. So what must always be checked before you sign anything? The party names, the dates, the financial obligations, the cancellation rights, the authorization scope, and most importantly, whether the document gives someone continuing power over your life, your home, your health, or your money. If you feel even a hint of discomfort, you are allowed to step back. You are allowed to say, "I will not sign without advice." You are allowed to read at your own pace. Peace, not pressure, should guide your hand. And now I want to tell you the most important truth. You do not have to face these decisions alone. You should call a lawyer when something feels too binding, too confusing, too urgent, or too heavy. Not because you are incapable, but because the world has changed. Documents today are filled with clauses that trap even the sharpest minds. I have been a lawyer long enough to know this. The strongest people are the ones who ask for help before signing, not after the damage is done. You are allowed to protect yourself. You are allowed to say, "I want someone in my corner." No one has the right to make you feel foolish for that. Let me bring you back to James, the man who signed the roof contract. When he sat across from me, he looked ashamed. He whispered, "I should have known better." I took his hand and said what I want to say to you now. You were never supposed to stand alone against pressure. You were never supposed to read fine print built to confuse. The system failed you. You did not fail yourself. And together, we fought to unwind that agreement. Piece by piece, clause by clause. He did not lose his home. He did not lose everything. He walked away with his dignity intact and with a lesson he now shares with every friend his age. Do not sign before you breathe. Let me close with this. You have lived too long, cared too deeply, and given too much to let a rush signature take anything from you. You are not a problem. You are not a burden. You are someone worth protecting. If any part of this feels familiar, stay with me a moment longer. Tell your story. Someone else may need to hear it. And if this helped you, share it with someone you love. One conversation could save them from a lifetime of regret. You are allowed to take your time. You are allowed to ask for help. And I will stand with you every step of the way.